Recently, I put together a video talking about what to paint when you lack inspiration. And today, I want to follow up on that video by talking about what you can do to keep your artistic skills sharp without having to paint. Whether you are burnt out and need a break, or you simply don't have any ideas for a painting, or you just don't want to go through the trouble of getting out your paints and brushes and doing all the setup and cleanup that goes along with it, this video is for you. The first thing I want to talk about is what you are seeing me do in this video, which is drawing. So recently I have been taking a drawing class that I've talked about in a couple of different recent videos, and this has been a really lovely break for me for a couple of reasons. I think the first and most obvious is that this just isn't what I regularly spend my time doing, so this feels refreshing all on its own. And on top of that, working in charcoal on something like newsprint, which is what you're seeing me do here, takes a lot less setup. And it also takes a lot less planning. I don't have to arrange my schedule to make sure that I have time to do a painting in one sitting before the paint all starts to dry. The beauty of drawing is that I can start, work on it for a few minutes. As soon as I feel my attention starting to wane or I get interrupted by something, I can simply step away and I can come back when I have the necessary bandwidth. And that just isn't possible the same way in painting. If I have to take a break from a painting, there is a chance that the consistency or texture of the paint has already started to change, and the ability of new paint to interact with the paint that's already on the canvas really changes depending on how long that break might be. If it's something like an hour, it's probably not going to be a big deal, but if I have to come back to something the next day, sometimes it's almost easier to give myself a few days away from it, let the paint get dry to the touch, and then oil it out so that the surface doesn't have that tacky, half-dry consistency that can sometimes happen if you're interrupted. But that just doesn't happen working in something like charcoal or graphite. It doesn't matter if I was just working on something 5 minutes ago or whether I want to come back to something I was working on months ago. And that is really easy to underestimate. It is just so useful to have that flexibility, and I've really enjoyed just being able to experience that again after so long of really exclusively working in paint. The other advantage that I have found here is that because I don't think of these as final paintings, because they're not on, an archival canvas that I want to have framed, but instead these are just exercises for me, I don't need to worry about finding the perfect reference or coming up with a complex composition. Instead, I can focus on anatomy studies. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. The studies you are seeing me work on are all courtesy of Umber Studios. They have a really excellent YouTube playlist showing references and breakdowns of how to go about drawing those references. They're all lit really well, and there's just a lot of really great variety in the anatomy of the individual sitters. And it is so great to just be able to sit down and plug in a YouTube playlist and not have to worry about coming up with some ideal reference. But drawing isn't the only way that you can mix up your medium to give yourself a break. I've also really enjoyed sculpting over the past few months. It really helps me in my painting practice to be able to think in terms of 3D forms rather than two-dimensional shapes. And it's something that I find myself working on while watching TV or just relaxing. And that makes it feel like a hobby in a way that painting hasn't felt in a while. I don't know whether it's something specific to painting or if it's just the fact that it's not my primary medium. I suspect it's a combination of both. I suspect that it's partially the fact that sculpture is so tactile that my eyes can actually take a little bit of a break. And I think I really enjoy the opportunity to just work on something that feels fresh and different. But the benefit, whether we're talking about drawing or we're talking about sculpture, I really see those benefits translating back into my painting practice. with drawing, I'm getting all of this value practice, which is so incredibly underrated. I think that as painters, we often feel like we're being kept in timeout if we are made to do value studies. But when you're working in charcoal, that's all you really can do. And so it really helps you to think in terms of, compressing your value structure, finding the gesture quickly and efficiently. And all of these things I really trust are going to be shown off once I am focusing more on painting. And the same is true for sculpture. I think really being able, not just being able, but having to think about all of the anatomy I'm trying to capture in 3 dimensions, I think is really instrumental in creating dimensionality in a 2D portrait. I especially love this with something like figurative work. Obviously, you see me working on a sculpture here, but doing things like sculpting horses, there are just so many angles of them I never had to think about before because it was so rare to draw or paint them from that angle, and really needing to think about the way in which your composition, your figure can look a certain way from a certain angle. The way that also means it has to look a certain way from another angle. There's just something about that was really stimulating my brain the whole time that I was working on those sculptures. All right, so the next thing that you can do to keep your skills sharp without painting is a little less expected, I think, and that is working on morning pages. So the last 2 things I was talking about, drawing and sculpting, I think these are fairly obvious exercises that you can engage in, where the correlation to what's happening in your painting practice is a fairly obvious one. But with something like morning pages, which is, essentially doing 15 minutes of uninterrupted stream of consciousness journaling, that has a little bit of a less obvious through line, but it really does make a huge difference in your creative practice. Some days when I kick off my day and I do my 15 minutes or 3 pages of stream of consciousness journaling, it comes out in the form of my to-do list for the day and just really thinking through all the things that I need to get done. And that might not sound like it has anything to do with creativity whatsoever, but going through that activity really helps to free up brain space for me to be able to be creative. So the very act of getting down all of the things that my brain keeps bouncing between that I know I have to get done, and having that down on paper actually frees me up to not overly think about that so that I can instead focus on something like painting. And the more regular this practice is, I think the more benefit you're going to see. But I think any time where you are feeling some kind of block around your creative practice, this is such a helpful step to take, either because you have some real life distraction that's keeping you from the studio that journaling your way through can really help you work past, or maybe you have an idea for a painting and you just aren't quite sure how to execute that idea. Well, journaling about that can really help you to break down an understanding of what you need from the composition, what you need from your reference, what it is you're responding to in other people's paintings that you really want to try and capture in this painting that you want to embark on. And as an extension of that, I really enjoy looking at other people's artwork as well. This is such a useful tool, and I try and keep this really regular. In fact, I even have like a little Pinterest widget on my phone's home screen so that all of the time it's showing me images of my favorite artwork and reminding me of what inspires me. So to best organize my favorite art, I really like using vision boards. I have a whole video walking through how to use Pinterest to create a vision board and how you can then assess that board, which I will link up in the upper right-hand corner as well as the description so you can check that out. I'm actually always really surprised by the number of artists I talk to who really don't look at other painters' work, and there's a lot that I could say about this. There's a lot I already have said about this. But if you're interested in really chasing after a style that excites you, it's really important to be literate and aware of other styles that are already out there. This generates so many ideas. It gets our creative juices flowing. It gives us ideas of interesting ways that we can combine aspects of our favorite paintings to create something wholly original and new, and that is unique to our voice. And so whether looking at other artists' work is something you already do very regularly, or it's something you feel has been lacking, I would really encourage you to spend some time going out and seeking out new artists and new art and familiarizing yourself with those pieces. Find out who the artists are who inspire your favorite artists. And you can do this through galleries, through museums, through Instagram, through Pinterest. There's so many different ways that you can go out there and experience just the amazing creativity that's already out there in the world. And once you have, amassed those experiences, you know the artist that you're drawn to, that's when I really find that vision board to be especially useful. Seeing all of your favorite work in one place helps you to see trends and patterns and really can show you what it is that you should be trying to do in your own work in order for you to feel really proud of what you are doing. And then the final recommendation that I want to make about how you can stay sharp artistically without painting is to spend some time listening, watching, and just experiencing other forms of creative expression. So, engaging with your favorite music, going to see a new movie, going to see a play, going to watch a dance performance. All of these things can really spark our own sense of inspiration, even if we don't really expect it to. Some of my strongest and most exciting ideas from paintings have come from reading a book or from watching one of my favorite TV shows and thinking about how I can translate the emotion of a certain moment or scene into, a 2D static painting. But I really want to make one point here, which is that not all of these things need to have a clear through line to your painting practice in order to have value. I've absolutely had moments, whether it's in reading a book or whether it's in my drawing practice, where I have really seen how clear the through line is to what I want to do in my painting practice. But that isn't always the case. One of my favorite TV shows that I've seen in the past year is Station 11. It's on HBO, and a shockingly small number of people have seen it, but it is about this apocalyptic situation and this band of Shakespearean actors who travels around this post-apocalyptic world just sharing Shakespeare with people, and how art, that creative expression is what people really crave. It's what we as a society need. And that might feel undervalued and unimportant right now. But when it comes down to it, this is what makes us human. This is what makes us excited to be alive. This is what makes all of it feel worth living. And so spending time, engaging with other art forms and just feeding that creative side of yourself, that has its own value. It doesn't always have to feel productive. It doesn't always have to feel purpose-driven. Just enjoying yourself and connecting with that part of yourself, that's enough too. If you find this kind of feedback really helpful and you think this is what you could use in order to reach your big painting goals, this is exactly the kind of mentorship I love offering to people. Really balancing being productive and staying really efficient with how you work toward your goals, while also balancing that with the mindset side of things and making sure that you are mitigating burnout, that you are listening to your creative instincts, and that you're making work that really resonates with you, that you're really proud of. If that sounds like what you're looking for, I would love to hear from you. I have a link in the description to find out more about my mentorship and apply to see if we are a fit to work together. And I would love to hear from you. All right, until next time, happy painting.